WTLC AM 1310, 92.7 FM, 95.1 FM, The Light, and its management. And now, to address the legal concerns of our community, AM 1310, The Light presents...
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in today. You could join us on YouTube. Our YouTube is In Lead Legal Issues of the Day. We'll be on Facebook. We're on multiple radio stations, primarily 1310 AM. Today, we have our superstar panel, Attorney Milton Grimes, one of the top trial lawyers in the world. He famously represented the case of Rodney King that led to the evolution in police misconduct cases. Also, we have our research analyst, master's degrees in law, cybersecurity expert, and a political dynamite, that's Attorney Vanita Banks. We're also happy to have such a distinguished panel of attorneys. But today we start off on a sad note. Today is the 20th anniversary of that fatal attack on America, September the 11th, 2001. And we're watching the memorial service. Our hearts and prayers, thoughts and prayers go out to all the victims of this terrible tragedy. And so the second issue, though, is violence in our community. And one of the things that bothered me, last year, there was we had an increase in homicide after the pandemic restrictions were lifted. But one of the local crimes that just bothered me to the core, I was watching TV, was a guy captured on video footage shooting his girlfriend in the head at a gas station here in Indianapolis. The girlfriend apparently wanted to break out with her abusive boyfriend, and in retaliation, he murdered her and kidnapped the kid, stole a car. Well, his trial was this week, and the guy's name that did the crime was captured on video. And he went to trial and was found guilty of kidnapping, robbery, murder. Here, the event happened on April 4th, 2020. And his sentence is set for, according to the newspaper, September the 24th. The guy's name is Henning, Henning. And so the question is, what type of sentence should the judge impose on a person if the maximum sentence is 120 years, if he did this homicide, broad on daylight, shoot somebody in the head because she want to break up with him, kidnap the kid, rob, what kind of sentence should he get? We have a record number of homicide in our community, and what should be done to stop the violence? We'll be interested in your thought process. It's our number 317-239-1310. Now, the third issue, though, is that we're going to start off with is, of course, COVID. It's on the rise again, and we have politicians playing politics, particularly here in Indiana. Our governor is against mandatory masks for businesses, which is a ludicrous idea, especially in light of the fact that the people all over the country, these conservative, they're attacking women's right to choose. And so on the one hand, they think it's okay for people to infect and kill other folks with the virus, but it's not okay for women to select whether or not she have abortion or whether it's rape or incest or otherwise. It's just a terrible tragedy. But in any event, starting off today, Attorney Vanita Banks, who's somewhat of an expert on these type of issues. Attorney Banks, have you been watching these cases and these legislation with this abortion going around the country?
Yes, absolutely, Attorney Lee. I have. And to your point, it's quite interesting and disingenuous for some of these governors in Texas and Florida with respect to these mask mandates. On the one hand, they're saying that a citizen has the right and the freedom either, not to take a COVID test or not to wear a mask. But on the other hand, we have laws that require you to wear a seatbelt, that require children to be secured in car seats, that mandate auto insurance, that prohibit one from being drunk while driving. We cannot smoke in most buildings or planes in this nation. And so to say that one has a right not to wear a mask, that's their individual prerogative or right, is truly a false premise. And as we look at these laws that are being passed across the country with respect to a woman's right to choose, and specifically there are two that I'm following. The one is the Senate Bill 8 in Texas, which would ban a woman from abortion after 6 weeks. And that 6 weeks time period is really an attack on Roe versus Wade, which was decided in 1973, a 7-2 opinion, where the U.S. Supreme Court held that inherent in the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, that the due process clause in the 14th Amendment protects against any state action, and a woman's right to choose an abortion falls within that right of privacy. And so under Roe, a viability test was established. And viability is considered to be around 24 weeks when a fetus can survive outside the womb on its own. And so in Roe, the court held that in the first trimester, the state may not regulate an abortion decision. In the second trimester, the state could impose some regulations, some reasonable regulations related to the health of the woman. But in the third trimester, when the fetus reaches viability, again, that's about 24 weeks, that a state could regulate abortions or prohibit it entirely, as long as there are some exceptions to protect the health of the mother. And so what we're seeing in these state laws in Texas and in Mississippi, the other case, the Dobbs case, which will be considered by the Supreme Court, is an attack on this viability test. In the Texas case, it's no abortions after 6 weeks, and in the Dobbs case, abortions would be banned after 15 weeks. And some scholars state that the viability test, and even former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, in her opinion, have thought that the viability test was always weak. And so let me stop there.
Wow, that was a significant review of the law. I really appreciate that. It's historical in nature because I didn't recall all the particulars of that Roe case. I don't know about you, Milton, but I've not actually done the constitutional litigation on that issue before. So it was really educational for me to rehear the different steps, because we now are seeing a radical departure from that decision.
We're seeing the attempt to radically depart from the decision, and the so-called, quote, heartbeat bills, like in Texas, would ban an abortion when a doctor detects fetal cardiac activity, and that's somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks of pregnancy. Roe versus Wade, as you know, has been the law of the land for 48 years. And the best argument, or one of the best arguments, in my opinion, is under the Supremacy Clause, which states that federal law supersedes state law, as well as stare decisis, which means that prior court precedent, stare decisis, means let the decision stand, that this long standing precedent should not be overturned. I also took a look at the lawyer who was only 26 years old, Sarah Weddington, and she's still the youngest, at age 26, she's still the youngest attorney to argue a successful case before the Supreme Court. And her words at that time ring true today in her argument, that we are not here to advocate abortion, not asking the court to rule on whether abortion is good or desirable. We are here to advocate the decision as to whether a particular woman will continue to carry or terminate a pregnancy should be made by the individual, and that she has a constitutional right to make that decision, and the state has no interest in interfering with that decision.
Wow. We've seen the effects of that decision resonate and became a hotball political issue. And one of my concerns, though, is that we're seeing polar opposite reaction to this decision. We see multiple Republican governors who are now apparently going to advance legislation on this issue. At the same time, they're saying, the other part of this that is ironic, in the news at the same time, is this mask mandate by President Biden. Now, in your state, Milton, you have a recall coming up because of that issue in part. And so you see, I don't understand the dichotomy here in terms of why the politician thinks it's okay to abrogate the rights of the women to make a choice in terms of what they do with their own body versus telling people to take vaccine, especially in light of the fact that I think that by the time I went to high school, I probably had 6 or 7 vaccines. And when you go to the military, you don't have a choice. They stick those vaccines in you when you come in. And so I'm just baffled as to why this is such a political issue. Both these issues now running simultaneously at the same time. So you see a clear difference in constitutional rights and the way people view it.
Let me just, if I may ask Ms. Banks a question related to the Roe versus Wade decision. I remember the times, I'm a little older maybe than both of you, the question would be when a teenage woman got pregnant, a young girl got pregnant, what are we going to do? What you going to do? And it was always the clothes hanger or back alley, or it's going to have an abortion. You got to have it in some dark, unsanitized environment. And oftentimes it would lead to death of a teenage girl because of the conditions in which they had to have an abortion from an unwanted pregnancy. Are we going back to those days if this stays in effect, Vanita?
Absolutely. Well, initially, with the law in Texas, which is in effect, the Supreme Court declined to take any action. And any citizen can sue a doctor who performs an abortion after 6 weeks, or anyone that supports a woman in seeking an abortion. in effect deputizing a citizen in this way. And these citizens can be paid up to $10,000. And so you're absolutely right, Milton. We're going to see a return back to that. Currently, we're seeing women go to other states, and as you described so tragically and unfortunately, we saw women who were going to other countries like Mexico and experiencing the threat of serious injury or death, you know, as a result of abortion. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry. I'm just interrupting.
As a result of abortion or the choice not being available in their states. And what's interesting, you know, as we look at these attacks or attempts to replace the viability standard with something else, when we look at Dobbs, the time frame would be 15 weeks. So we're looking at 6 weeks in the Texas law, which I would think that most people would find unreasonable. The current law, Roe versus Wade, we're talking about 24 weeks in terms of that viability standard. And Mississippi is 15 weeks. So along that continuum, 6, 15, and 24 weeks shows the opportunity for the Supreme Court, many of which have expressed concerns about the Roe versus Wade decision to change that viability standard.
I was reading yesterday or this morning, I've forgotten which, that at 6 weeks, most people, I don't want to say most, a percentage of women, young girls especially, don't even know they're pregnant in the first 6 weeks of pregnancy. So to put that as—
That's absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's absolutely right, Milton. That's absolutely right.
Well, that's incredible. Let's take one call real quickly, then we'll come back to this. Okay, producers will— Caller, you have a question or comment for us today?
Yes. I was calling about the president's authority to declare a national emergency. Is there anything that would preclude him from doing that on the COVID virus, similar to the governor of Florida making a mandate on masks?
Well, wait a second. Can you repeat that a little bit louder?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was questioning the president's authority to declare a national emergency on the COVID virus and put in specific procedures and policies that the whole country would have to follow. And I see that similar to what the governor of Florida did just in his state of Florida on the mask mandate. I would think that the president has the legal authority to declare a national emergency on COVID.
Wow. So Milton, Attorney Grimes and Banks, so the caller want to know, do you believe that the President of the United States has the legal authority to declare COVID a national emergency, to put specific mandates in place that requires all citizens to follow?
Well, I think the president has authority. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think he has the authority to declare a national emergency where he sees the safety of the citizens at risk, just like any other time. So I think he does. What do you think, Vanita?
I agree, absolutely. In fact, he has declared a public health emergency through his 6-point path out of COVID-19, out of the COVID-19 pandemic, which he announced this week. Those 6 points include mandating that all employers with over 100 employees to ensure that their employees are either vaccinated or tested on a weekly basis. He's requiring vaccinations of all federal workers and the millions of contractors that do business with the federal government. He's requiring vaccinations of over 17 million healthcare workers at Medicare and Medicaid hospitals, large entertainment venues to require proof of vaccination or testing for entry, and requiring or strongly encouraging employers to provide paid time off for employees to get vaccinated. These issues, of course, may well be litigated, as we saw in Florida with Governor DeSantis. His ban on mandatory mask mandates in schools was just a couple days ago upheld by the Federal Appeals Court. So while the state governors can declare that they have authority, and the president, of course, national federal authority, these issues can be litigated, and we're seeing that as an example in the Governor DeSantis' ban on mandatory mask mandates in schools.
Well, here's one thing to answer the question specifically. Don't forget, Article 2 of the United States Constitution gives the President of the United States broad executive power and enforcement authority to use his discretion to determine how to enforce laws or otherwise manage the resources of the United States of America. So an executive order, although it's not a law, laws must be passed as know by Congress, right? But it has the force of law and it must be carried out. Like the commander-in-chief could issue an order to have a military attack a country. So there's broad executive authority, but the question though is the political will. What happened is that we have a percentage of folks in America, maybe, I look at the polls number, like 30%, who detest the idea of being told what to do. And then the most glaring part of this is that you see those same people and their relative in the hospitals. Now we have hospitals that are overcrowded. They have no capacity for regular surgical procedures such as heart attacks, strokes, and things like that. And so on the one hand, people have individual liberties. On the other hand, though, is that they're making it bad for other folks, because we saw the gentleman on TV this week from North Carolina whose wife could not have treatment because there were no beds at the hospital. So the president does have authority, and also they could use the military, for example, to go and help treat patients. So that's my take on it, that yes, the president does have the authority, but the problem though is that you get such a political pushback from so many Americans who detest the idea of wearing masks or being vaccinated or otherwise taking safety protocol to protect their neighbors and their friends. And that's my take on it.
The problem is not just political pushback, Nate. We're getting physical pushback to other people's choices. I don't want to be a person who is forecasting a civil war in this country, but
serious car
some urgent things happening in this country. Here,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like here in California, people are in an uproar about the recall of the governor. Thankfully, I think Mr. Elders, sadly, an African-American gentleman who's the
Are you sure about that?
He's the black face. He's the black face for white supremacy, as everybody say. He's a sick puppy, man. That's all I can say. And he grew up down the street here from where I'm sitting right now. But I just never.
Yes, Mr. Elder has been around a long time.
He's crazy. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I retract that. I don't mean that. We're on the air. He's not
It's
crazy.
an opinion.
He's different than people expect him to be.
Well, I was shocked.
We are weaponizing children. We're using children to change things, and it's just, I feel a lot of tension in the air. You know, if you go someplace and you're not identified as the right politically person, you may get attacked physically.
It's my understanding, Milton, in California with the governor recall effort, that Governor
Newsom,
that early indications are that Governor Gavin may survive this recall. If you look at the early voting, that early voting and mail-in voting is up. And that looks good for the governor. What do you think?
Well, from what I read in today's paper, it looked as though he's going to be okay from what the polls are and what the poll watchers and the people who keep those numbers say. But it's just the politics that's going around, you guys, that scares me. It's almost, it's almost like being in the South during the 60s and the 70s. Just a violent atmosphere. A lot of killings, like Nate said, in the streets, a lot of murder, a lot of shootings. Yeah. Everybody got a gun. If everybody doesn't have a gun, you think they have guns, so you got a gun. It's tough times out here.
Well, what I was concerned about, speaking of your leading Republican candidate for governor, Mr. Candidate Elder, he said something, a couple of statements that he stated that they recorded was so outlandish until it told me he's unfit to even run. The first thing, they captured him on camera saying that he thought he gave the litany of information about slavery and the fact that slavery owners, when they outlawed slavery, they were given reparation, according to him. I wasn't familiar with that in my history, but then he thought that based on our analysis, the slave owners could get reparation because their property was taken, the same as blacks who are seeking reparation today. I mean, it was such an outlandish statement, and it appears that he had made multiple statements and he got a checkered past. So you get these pseudo makeshift candidates, and for whatever reason, they get popular. We see the same thing down in governor. We see a guy who is threatening to kill women, a stalker. Now he's the leading candidate on the Republican side for Senate, Herschel Walker. It's just shocking to me that there's a certain segment of our society now that is now proponed to support these violent actors. It's just idiotic to me.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. Are we on?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I agree, Mr. Lee. So.
Well, the other thing that I was,
and this is a minority of people with respect to mandating vaccines. 56% of people believe that vaccines should be required, in the workplace. 61% believe that they should be required in order to board planes. And 53% believe that vaccines should be mandated for those that eat in restaurants. So there's a minority that's holding the rest of the nation hostage.
Yeah. Now, that's a good point. Let's take a couple calls because our phones now lines are really crowded. Let's just take 2 or 3 calls, then we'll come back. Okay, caller, you have a question for us today.
Yes, this is Pierre. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Pierre. Nice to hear from you again, sir.
Okay, thank you. President Biden's doing the right thing, but now he has to do the right politically, and he needs to explain to the people in a national address that while he's doing this, you still don't have to take the shot, but you're just going to get tested every week. But what's going on, especially with our Attorney General here in Indiana, they were just waiting for him to do this so they could turn it into a big government trying to manage their life. And a lot of black people are going to fall for that too. I know a lot of them that believe that way. And Joe's going to save a lot of lives. He's going to get a lot of people paid time off, and they're going to go right to the polls in the midterms and vote against him because they're going to say he made them do something that they didn't want to do. So the Democrats have to emphasize that you don't have to take the shot, but you're going to get tested every week.
Hey, well, Pierre, here's the problem, though, that I'm having with this whole debate. Everybody who went from elementary through high school would have had somewhere between 4 to 9 shots. Anyone who served in the military, when you went through basic training, you got shots. And so when I hear these people, and by the way, when you're in the military, you have no idea what they're putting in your body. You go off through a line and they do an air gun and shoot you with a needle or something. And so the point is that when I hear these people are saying they're opposed to this process, but they've been taking vaccination their whole life, and they just all of a sudden have become absent-minded to the fact of what happened as to how they got through elementary and high school. You can go to college anywhere without having proof for vaccination, way before this vaccination process started with COVID.
President George Washington mandated vaccinations of the military, our first president. You can't travel to certain countries without being vaccinated.
But now it's more sophisticated, you see, Ms. Banks and Mr. Lee, because they put in this tracking material inside of our body, which compares with this is the tracker. The government and anybody knows anywhere we are. In so many cases I get where they pull the phone so they can tell where you were damn near every second of the day, because of the towers. So the argument that is
an example.
Yeah, the argument that is
that's an example, and we must make clear, Milton, of the disinformation, the misinformation that is out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, Pierre, you ever thought about that?
I was resistant to the shot. My main resistance was I don't like needles. I'm fearful. I just didn't want that needle. And they make the needle look like a dagger on TV, and it's probably one of the easiest shots I've had in my life. No pain. I just don't like needles.
Yeah, we know all of that, but that needs to be explained to the people because these Republicans are trying to use it. They're going to take credit for saving a lot of lives that the president's saving. They're going to spin it some kind of way that they can get political mileage out of it, and Joe's going to save a lot of lives, and they're going to try to capitalize on it. And with that recall out in California, that is dangerous too, because if we lose it, and I don't know if does Elder even have a chance. But at any rate, a change in California, and I don't know, a senator or whatever, we're in big trouble. So thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
Milton, it's my understanding that out in California, I read that the strategy that Gavin Newsom is using, which may result in his success with respect to the recall, is exactly the strategy that the Democrats should employ to the caller's point, as we move forward in these midterm elections.
Yeah, okay, let's take the next caller. Okay, caller, you have a comment for us today.
Hello, how you doing today?
Hey, Jim, how you doing, sir? You have a question or comment for us today?
Yes, I have a question and comment. Hello, how you doing today?
Doing great.
I like your show. This is America. You do have constitutional rights. You have free will. You notice God doesn't make you do anything. For example, it's a white. When you women used to say, "It's my choice, it's my body, I got free will," that was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now y'all knows last month in August, and I think it was in another city where 100 and some vaccinated people got the shot and died. I know 5 people personally that got the shot and died from it. I know someone at 75 years old 2 years ago got the pneumonia shot, and guess what? It messed them up. They're in a wheelchair now, and you can't sue now. So why don't we do this? Why don't y'all get the president to hold these pharmaceutical companies that if people get, if they die from it or they have autoimmune disease, because we know that people have got the vaccine and got autoimmune disease, and you can get into the hospital. I just was in ICU with someone.
Hey, Jim, wait a second. Hey, Jim,
now, let me say this. Y'all talk. Can I say? Remember, I called in. I've been listening to y'all. I'm just making statements. Remember, I don't care. Let me finish. Can I finish? You're not supposed to cut me off.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I was in the hospital. Someone that I know signed up for procedure, and they was able to get their procedure done. Someone that I know was in ICU 2 or 3 days ago. There was plenty of rooms in there. I was up there for everybody well. So a lot of this stuff is propaganda. You cannot force anybody to do anything because God does not force you to do anything. God doesn't force you to make you do anything, period. We have free will. But we're not living in a communist country, period. So we got to quit trying to fall out with people because it's nobody's business what you do with your body. It's your medical business. It's your medical business protected by HIPAA law. So nobody should require you to do it. If you want to, you get it. If you don't, you get it. So we got to get, this is not a communist. That's what happened with Hitler. Hitler was trying to force, look what he did to the Jews. He deemed them, put the star on them, and then they deemed the Jews as bad people. Then we allowed the Holocaust to come. They said slavery was wrong. And then they said slavery was right. And then you catch a slave, bring them back. So we cannot allow anybody to try to force their will on other people because it's your right to choose what you want to do. Then you wouldn't say that it's my body. I do what I want to do. Ain't no man going to tell me what to do with my body. Didn't I say that? And then remember last year, Democratic Party, and I'm neither one of them, Republicans. Remember last year they said when Trump was the president, because they thought that Trump was going to win, and they thought he was going to come out with the vaccine when he was president. They said, don't get the vaccine. You can't trust the vaccine, blah, 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 blah. Now, all of a sudden, and you've seen people, 45,000 people have died in 3 days and 72 hours for taking that vaccine. And so, what if that's your family? I know somebody 21 years old that got the vaccine, didn't have COVID. They got underlying health disease. They're in the hospital right now, 21 years old. That was my daughter. The 5 people I know that died personally from the vaccine. What if that was your mother, your father, person that got the pneumonia shot? They're in the hospital they have underlying health disease right now in a wheelchair, messed up because of that pneumonia vaccine. You can't sue. Why don't you get the president, the pharmaceutical company accountable if these people get the shot and something wrong with them?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your perspective.
Wait a second. Let me correct something that the caller just said, because now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a duty to correct something that he said is fundamentally, erroneously, and false. He said that 122 people died from shots. That is a falsehood. When people die, the only way that you could determine whether or not a person died of a particular cause, you have to have clinical reports from pathologists. So you have to have autopsy done. There's no 122 people ever died in this country from a COVID-19 vaccine at one time. So that's false. The second thing is that when he was talking about somebody taking a shot and they haven't been hospitalized, that stuff you can't verify. But the third thing that the caller was concerned about, let me correct you on something. Vaccine doesn't track what you are. Your cell phone does. So the cell phone that you carry around with you, if you're worried about the government tracking what you're doing, then get rid of your cell phone, because that's the number one method in which the government can track you where you are. And there's a couple of things that the caller said that I thought was erroneous, but I'll go to the next caller. Donna, you have a question or comment for us then?
Good morning. Thank you. I just want to chime in real quick. Anyone listening?
I can't hear you.
Hey, Donna, can you speak up a little bit louder, turn your volume up a little bit?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying those of us that are walking around and able to read, we're able to do that because we had a vaccine passport card that showed we were immunized. And this has been going on for decades in this country. So I don't understand where the issue is. They wouldn't have been able to learn how to read if they hadn't had a vaccine passport card back in the 50s, 40s, 60s to get into school to read. So that's number one. Number two, the business of a chip, you just said it. They pay for the chip for the government to track them and get mad when the chip called a cell phone doesn't work properly and they can't do what they want to do on the internet. So there's the chip right there that they pay for every month. So it's absolutely ridiculous to hear individuals speaking about the chip and about the passport. We've had a passport in this country for decades. That's why we can all read, because we were allowed to go to school with that passport. That's all I want to say.
That's an excellent point. I still have my vaccine cards from when, I was in elementary school. I ran across those recently. And yes, you have a right, to the earlier caller's point, to make choices regarding your body. We've been discussing that with respect to Roe versus Wade. But you don't have a right to injure or kill others. And so that's where the distinction lies.
Yeah, this is a different issue, talking about sickness and disease and infection. There's a little 5-year-old. I saw her yesterday. She just started school and her dad went and got her because he keeps her on the weekend. And I wanted to go over and give her a hug like we usually do. And I go, I can't do that because she's been now going to school. She's exposed to this disease. And that poor little baby and I can't embrace each other like we used to because of the fear of contagion. So it's different. So I think we have a right to decide what is the best and what's the healthiest thing and the safest thing for our society. And our right to do what we want with our body has nothing to do with the requirement to make sure we are as safe as possible. And that's the vaccine and masks. So it's a different argument in my outlook.
And as we continue to reflect,
go ahead, Counselor.
I was just going to say that as we continue to reflect on 20 years after 9/11, where we all remember where we were and what we were doing when we heard that news, one of the memories that is still, forever etched in my conscience is how we came together, united as one, as a nation, and that unity, was our greatest strength at that time. And so, unfortunately, we've seen that erode over the last 20 years, and is currently best illustrated over this debate with respect to COVID-19.
Okay, we'll take one quick call before the break. Okay, Carl, you got a question or comment for us today?
With a public health prosecution. That's what it was. So, you got people going around telling you that you got to take a vaccine. That is something that I don't see how attorneys can even defend that, because you have, it's
Hey, Larry, did you take your vaccine shot yet?
Hello?
Hey, Larry, did you take your shot yet for COVID?
I don't know about it, but some people came to my house yesterday from the public health department trying to knock on my door, and I did not answer my door. So, Nate, and you attorneys in there, this is vicious, and Biden have already accused the black people of being the ones that's spreading the disease. So that's another mark against us. So I don't see how you can sit up there and promote something that you don't know anything about. If the people that are talking about it knew anything, they'd have the answer by now. So they don't know any more than we do what's going on. And I think the case of Massachusetts versus Jacobson have really been misconstrued. You need to read the first paragraph and see where Justice Harlan said It depends on the comfort of the majority, the safety and comfort of the majority. Now, if you have 600,000 people or 14,000 people in the state of Indiana that dies from COVID out of 6 million, that's not the majority, Nate. You attorneys know that. I don't know what your angle is, but you're misinforming the public. You're doing a great disastrous effort to our community, Nate, and your attorneys you have with you.
Well, let me respond to that, Larry. There's something very important. Everybody that listens to this show, I want you to use common sense about this. In order for you to get through elementary and high school, you had between 4 and 9 vaccinations that were mandatory. If you attended college, you had to show proof of vaccination, it had to be on the record, otherwise you weren't going to be allowed to go. If you entered the military, if you went to basic training, particularly when you had wars and stuff like that, we had mandatory vaccination of soldiers and that were going to battle to prevent them from the disease process. So this idea of vaccination has been around in the United States since 1905. So the idea that somehow this is some significant constitutional issue is insane. The reason being is that we've gotten this far in our society by using common sense. Common sense tells us that we're now the only country in the world, folks. We're the only country in the world where we have folks who are opposed to taking a medicine that will save their lives. We're the only country in the world. For a long time, I always thought that Americans, we were exceptional because we had smart people. We have the greatest academic institution in the whole world at Harvard and MIT. We got the #1 hospital in the world, Massachusetts General. So we have all these things that are superior to other countries and things like that. But yet and still, we've somehow made vaccination to save life a political event. Folks, vaccination is not a political event. And then one other thing too, I need to correct by the earlier call that I had missed. The fifth thing he said that when Trump was in office, Democrats were against vaccination. Folks, that's false. That's not accurate. You know, I was always in favor of vaccination, but as a trial lawyer, I first researched to see whether or not there was any litigation.
Living in your home, but now it needs upgrading, and like most of us.
And so the thing that I thought was significant is that they put severe limitation on vaccination, particularly with COVID. And the thing that I see that most people don't is that I do medical malpractice cases. I get to talk to healthcare professionals. Folks, they're tired. They're tired of seeing sick patients. When this gentleman said that the hospital had beds, that's not accurate. They may have beds, but they don't have staff to do it because they're overworked. The doctors and hospital professionals I know, they're just tired. They tell me, and I can get someone on the radio show to talk about this. They see these sick patients come to the hospital every day and they're not vaccinated. So like 98.5% of people who go into the hospital are the ones that did not get shots. And when they get there and on their deathbed, they're about to die, they always say, I wish I'd have got vaccinated now. But it's too late at that point in time. So when I hear these people talking about this and the legal issue, it's far-fetched. From a legal standpoint, I would never accept a case where somebody say, I want to sue because I don't want to get vaccinated. I'm thinking, you have, in your mind, decide that you don't want to protect your friends and your neighbors. So if you contract a virus, you can spread it to 50 other people, and they could have a much worse outcome than you. So I don't think it's fair for you to say in a selfish manner, I know, Larry, you said that people came to your house, but you put other folks at risk when you don't take the steps to protect yourself from this dreadful disease process. And that's my comment as related to the callers. Go ahead.
I agree with you, Attorney Lee. And my question would be, in response to some of the comments today, what is your suggestions, recommendations on how we come out of this pandemic to move towards some semblance of normal life moving forward? What are your tangible, specific recommendations for accomplishing that?
Well, I got another point. For all the folks who don't trust these medical professionals who are saying that you should be vaccinated, don't go to the doctor anymore. If you get sick, treat yourself at home. If you don't trust the medical professionals who uniformly telling you that you need to protect yourself and take the precaution of taking shots, you need to make sure you wear masks at certain times. If you don't trust the medical professionals who are telling you to save your life, then you have a choice. If you get sick, don't go to the doctor. If you are dying, don't go to the doctor. You have that choice. But the better approach would be to follow the medical professionals. We've done that our whole lives, and I don't see why we should do a radical departure. Folks, it's not a political issue. It isn't. We made it a political issue because our country, when Attorney Grimes was talking about that, we have so much acrimony now in our society. People are just rude to each other. There's so much killing. There's so much hostility. We saw an increase in this with the 45th president. All of a sudden, Americans hate each other. It was sort of like what happened during earlier time where you turn folks against each other, you fabricate information about the election, you lie, and then 30% of people believe it. And that result is that we've made a public health crisis a political issue that was only made worse by the former president.
Who advocated for the vaccine, by the way.
Yeah, he did. And what was weird is that he secretly did it himself. So let's go and take one more caller before we conclude today. Okay, Dunn, you have a question coming for us today, sir.
Yeah, my comment would be this. You know, the past president, I believe if he had been elected, I believe that more people would have been vaccinated by now because the Republicans would have, latched on to that. The Democrats were going to, get the vaccination anyway. He just didn't get the credit, and because he didn't get the credit, then people chose to do what they wanted to do. But I believe if he had been elected, we'd have had this thing probably licked by now.
If who had been elected?
Well, Don, I disagree with that because the former president, I don't want you to come on the show to rewrite history. Let's go to a quick history lesson here. When this disease process started, the former president said it'll be over with in 4 to 6 weeks. And then it would be over with by spring. And that you can cure yourself by ingesting bleach into your body. So all these falsehoods.
Changed his mind, but he changed his mind. And everybody changed their mind with this Delta. He changed his mind, and like I said, he even got the shot. So I'm just saying the Republicans, that's what they do. They always change their minds. They just sort of fit the.
Hey, Don, when did the president ever come on TV or radio or any place and say, retract the fact that he said put bleach in your system to get rid of the virus? When did he ever retract the fact about he said that hydrochloroquine will cure the disease? I never heard that.
Yeah, but he got the shot. And like you said, he didn't get the credit. So, of course, he changes. He's like a chameleon. Like I said, I believe that the Republicans would have bought in to get the shot if he had been elected.
I disagree. I think that we'd have had about 5 million people dead now if he had got reelected, quite frankly, because he had no plan to actually cure it. He had no plan to implement anything. So we'd had, instead of having 620,000, we had 6 million people dead now.
Under Biden, we got 250,000 dead. Under Trump, it was 40,000.
No, that's hold it, sir. Hold it. You can't rewrite history on this program. That's fundamentally false. When Biden took office, we had 550 some odd thousand folks in America dead from COVID. The Washington said it was 1.2 million, but we had over 550,000. When Biden took office, they did an aggressive process and they bought 300,000 of the doses. Since then, another 300 million. And so the net result is that there's been an aggressive act, and it's been working. We had the numbers way down in June. And then all of a sudden, we have about 100 million Americans who refuse to take the vaccination. And it's those folks who are now 98.5% of people going to the hospital and dying because of COVID. We have the children who have been infected, who can't take the shots, and that's what the history is. So it's very important that you not come on the show and rewrite history. There's public video of what the former president said. Okay, closing comment by first Attorney Banks. We got it 1 minute.
My closing comment is, please get your vaccination and be safe.
Closing comment by Attorney Grimes.
Well, Nate, I don't know what to say anymore. I honestly don't. But I can tell the people, stay tuned, don't tune off, don't tune out. Go vote, Californians, please, so that we can keep Governor Newsom in office. We got to think about our kids. This thing is out of hand, and we got to think about the safety of our youth. And I think the vaccination is the alternative, en masse.
Well, I like to thank our audience and some closing comments. One of the reasons that we're in this current crisis, again, is that we have a process of misinformation. We've seen this firsthand today. Misinformation is guiding people in the wrong direction. For example, when a caller come on the show and said 122 people died because of COVID testing or shots, that's just fundamentally false. When people come on this and say that Democrats were against vaccination, that's false. And when people say that the hospital got plenty of beds, folks, talk to medical professionals. They're tired. And one of the problems we're facing in our country is that last year, the disease process got so bad that the government paid people to stay at home. They paid people to stay at home to prevent the spread of the disease. Now we have jobs everywhere and people don't want to come out to work. So we have to cure that problem. But remember, what caused that is that we didn't want people working last year. The disease was spreading too bad. But now we got to get off our hinds and get back out there and get back to work and be more productive as citizens. You know, our law firm, we've been trying to hire receptionists and put notices out. And it's just a drop in the employment market in terms of people seeking employment for every reason. Although we see that the unemployment rates are up, but there's jobs everywhere. So go out there and apply, but also encourage your friends, your neighbors, if they've not gotten the vaccination, please, please do so right away, because the life that you save, it may be your own. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you next week. And may God bless and keep you until we talk once again. Goodbye.
Bye, Nate.